Work was brutal that day. My feet ached, shoulders knotted, brain fried from back-to-back meetings. All I wanted was to melt into my couch, maybe scroll X and disassociate for a few hours. But then my phone buzzed. Screen lit up, Uncle Gabe. Weird. He doesn't text. He's more the birthday calls and dad jokes kind of guy. Curious, I unlocked it. "You need to see this, Danny." "I'm sorry." My stomach dipped. Just 2 lines, but my gut knew something was off. I tapped the video file attached. There she was. Lena, my younger sister, 26, smug as hell, reclined on a lawn chair in my parents' backyard, the same yard I grew up in. I recognized the janky swing set, the cracked concrete, the rusted BBQ pit Dad refuses to replace. She had a drink in hand, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and a grin. That grin wide, cocky, like she just scammed the world and wanted applause. "I swear Donnie is too naive to ever kick me out," she said, laughing. "She just lets me stay there like it's a damn hotel. No rent, no rules, free food. It's perfect." Laughter erupted around her. My cousin Mateo's annoying wheeze, our Aunt Grace's snort, even Dad's low chuckle. I froze. Hit replay. Lena tossed her head back, fake sighing like a soap opera star. She thinks I'm broke and heartbroken like poor little me post-breakup? Nah, I'm stacking. I make way more than she thinks. But why spend my cash when I've got a sucker for a sister? Another round of laughter. My ears rang. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. My thumb hovered, hit replay again. 3 years. 3 whole years she'd been living in my guest room. Said she just needed a soft landing. Her ex had cheated. Rent was overdue. Job was toxic. Tears on FaceTime, shaky voice. "Just for a few months, Donnie. Please. I'll get back on track." And I, idiot me, believed her. I'd let her stay. No rent, no bills. I covered groceries, utilities, even Uber rides some months. She said she was healing, finding herself. So I let it slide. But this? She'd been mocking me. Behind my back. In my own home. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, jaw clenched, heart thudding like it was trying to warn me all along. I texted Uncle Gabe back, "Thanks. Don't say anything, I'll handle it." The video played again, like it wanted to burn itself into my skull. Her words hit differently, now sharper, louder. "I make more than she knows. Why spend when I've got a sucker for a sister?" I turned off my phone, just sat in the dark, eyes wide open, chest hollow. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I kept waiting for the sound of her key in the door, her voice calling out like nothing had changed. She didn't come home, and I was glad. Morning hit like a slap. Sunlight filtered through the blinds as I stood in the kitchen, pouring coffee with hands steadier than they should have been. I was calm, not sad, not furious, just cold, focused. The front door creaked. She waltzed in, like she hadn't detonated my entire sense of reality 12 hours earlier. Hair up in a messy bun, hoodie half-zipped, yawning dramatically. "Morning," she chirped, stretching. "Ugh." I crashed at Katie's. "The guest bed here is too comfy, I might never leave." I smiled. "Too big. Too still. Glad you're getting rest." She poured herself coffee, opened my oat milk, started scrolling her phone, like she paid for any of it. She didn't know. Not yet. But that was going to change. "So," I said casually, "what's your plan for this month?" She looked up, confused. "What do you mean?" I shrugged, nonchalant. "You've been here a while. Just wondering if you're looking at places." "You know, next steps?" She groaned. "Danny, not this again. Moving is so expensive right now. I'm swamped. Work's been crazy." "Yeah, crazy enough to party in backyards and call me a sucker." I nodded slowly. "I get that. But I've been thinking, maybe it's time for some changes around here." She barely looked up. "What kind of changes?" I let the silence hang, sipped my coffee, watched tension prick her shoulders. "Well," I said lightly, "starting next month, I think you should start paying rent." Her phone froze in her hand. "Wait, what?" I smiled. "Just a fair amount. $1,200 a month. Way below market for this area." She blinked, then scoffed. "You're joking." "Nope. Are you seriously trying to charge me rent?" "Donnie, we're sisters. And you've lived here for free for 3 years." "That's not fair." I raised an eyebrow. "What's not fair is you laughing about it with Dad and Mateo." She went still. Her mouth opened, closed, then narrowed. "What video did he send you?" she asked quietly. "Ah, so she knew." "Does it matter?" I asked, calm as glass. "I heard you. I saw it. Every word." She swore under her breath. "God, it was just a joke. You weren't joking. It was taken out of context." "I watched it 6 times, Lena." Silence. She stared at the countertop like it had betrayed her too. Finally, she snapped. You're just mad because I have my life together and you don't. That one almost made me laugh. Together? Living off me like a leech? I shook my head. No, Lena. I'm mad because I believed you. And you used me. She rolled her eyes, defensive now. Whatever. You can't kick me out. I've got rights. I smiled. Slow, sharp. You do. And I've got a lease template. Want me to send it to your email? She gaped. I'll give you till the first to decide. Rent or relocate. Your choice. I walked away before she could speak. The air behind me felt electric. Charged. I could feel the shift. She didn't know it yet, but I wasn't the sister she once fooled. I was the storm she never saw coming. She didn't talk to me for 3 days. Not a word. No sarcastic comments, no fake charm. Just silence. And honestly, it was the most peaceful 3 days I'd had in years. She slinked around like a cat that got caught knocking over a vase but refused to admit it. Doors closing quietly instead of slamming. TV volume at a whisper. Dishes mysteriously washed for once. Guilt? Maybe. Panic? Definitely. But I didn't press. I wanted her to stew in it. The thing about people like Lena, they only feel consequences when silence screams louder than words. On the 4th day, she finally cracked. It was late, nearly midnight, and I was curled up on the couch with a throw blanket and half a glass of wine when I heard her pacing in the hallway, like a storm trying to decide whether to hit or pass. Then, suddenly, she was there, arms crossed, standing like a stubborn teenager caught sneaking in after curfew. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice tight. I muted the TV, didn't look up. Sure. She walked in but didn't sit. "Look, I said some stuff I shouldn't have. That video? I didn't mean it the way it sounded." I finally looked at her, calm. "You meant every word." "No." It was. Exaggerated. We were drinking, joking. I was just venting. I raised an eyebrow. "You called me a sucker. Said I was too naive to ever kick you out. That you were making more than I knew while living here for free." "That's not venting, Lena. That's confessing." Her face hardened, then softened just as fast. She changed her tone, leaning into something gentler. "You've always been the responsible one. You know that. I'm not good with, stability. I get overwhelmed. I wasn't trying to take advantage of you." I almost laughed. Her shifting tactics were textbook. Blame the stress, play the victim, lean on our history. I could see the panic in her eyes, though she knew the free ride was coming to an end, and she didn't have a plan B. "I'm not angry," I said, and that surprised her. "I'm just done being taken for granted." She didn't respond right away, just chewed on her bottom lip like it had answers. I don't have the money for rent right now," she said finally, trying to sound small. "You bought concert tickets last week. VIP ones. I saw the email," I replied flatly. She flinched. Caught. "That was before you got exposed?" I finished. "Yeah, I figured." Her shoulders slumped. "So what now? You want me to sign some official lease and pretend I'm just another renter?" "No," I said, setting my wine glass down and standing. "I already sent it. Check your inbox." Her eyes widened. "You're serious?" "Completely. Rent starts the 1st. $1,200. If you don't want to stay, that's fine too, but I'm not your fallback anymore." She scoffed, turning away. "Wow, okay. I see how it is. Just toss your own sister out like trash." I walked past her to the hallway, pausing long enough to say, "Trash wouldn't have lasted 3 years under my roof." I didn't wait for a reply. She stayed up late that night. I could hear her through the walls' phone calls, fast footsteps, the unmistakable sound of someone realizing the floor was crumbling under them. But she didn't bring it up again. Not to me. The days that followed were quiet, like we were both waiting for something to snap. She'd disappear for hours, come home with fast food bags and a blank stare. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't care. I was already drafting the next steps in my head. See, it wasn't about the money anymore. It was the principle, the disrespect. The way she smiled while mocking me in that video like I was some idiot handing out free housing to a con artist in a hoodie. I'd been kind. She'd taken it as weakness. She thought I'd never do anything about it. That was her mistake. When the 1st of the month came, she didn't pay. Of course she didn't. I waited until noon, then I sent the warning. Email, text, formal notice. Rent was due today. You have 48 hours to submit payment, or a 14-day notice to vacate will be filed. She didn't respond. Not a got it, not a thumbs up emoji. Just silence. That evening, she walked in like nothing happened, dropped her bag on the floor, and went straight to the fridge. "You want anything from the Thai place?" she asked, like we hadn't crossed the point of no return. "No," I said, not even looking up. "I'm good." She ordered, ate, and then vanished into her room, slamming the door behind her. That was the last straw. The next morning, I filed the paperwork, printed it, signed it, delivered it to her door with a sticky note that read, 14 days. No more games, no more warnings. If she wanted to ignore me, she could do it while packing. The thing about Lena, she never believed consequences were real. She thought charm and time would fix everything, but not this time. I had made peace with being the villain in her version of the story. I'd rather be the villain than the fool. When she saw the notice, she went quiet again. No dramatic outburst, no guilt trip monologue, just a locked door and barely audible footsteps. I imagined her calling every friend she'd ghosted over the years, burning through favors she hadn't earned. And honestly, that wasn't my problem. She had options. I just wasn't going to be one of them anymore. The next 3 days were a strange blur. I went to work, came home, cooked for one. The house was cleaner, quieter, lighter, like it was exhaling after years of tension. On day 4, she finally spoke again. I was folding laundry when she appeared in the doorway, arms limp at her sides. "So, what if I do move out?" she asked. Not defiant, just tired. "Then I'll wish you the best," I replied, folding a towel neatly. "No hard feelings?" she asked, voice uncertain. "I think we're way past no feelings at all," I said. "But I'm not angry anymore. Just done." She nodded slowly, looking around like she was seeing the place for the first time. "I didn't mean to ruin things between us," she said. I looked at her, really looked at her. "You didn't ruin it, Lena. You just showed me it was never what I thought it was." She swallowed hard, eyes shiny. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll figure it out." "Good," I said softly, and I meant it. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted peace. She turned and left the room. And this time, I didn't follow. She didn't leave right away, but I could feel the shift. Her presence changed, like she was already halfway gone. Boxes started appearing, first one in the hallway, then another by the front door. She didn't say much, and I didn't ask. It was like both of us silently agreed to let the clock run out without dragging the past across the finish line. For the first time in years, the tension between us wasn't sharp or angry, just quiet, hollow. She moved slower those days, like the weight of everything she'd ignored had finally landed on her shoulders all at once. I caught glimpses of her pacing the living room, phone pressed to her ear, whispering in frustrated tones. Her voice didn't carry the usual confidence. It cracked around the edges, the way it does when the walls you leaned on finally start crumbling. I didn't eavesdrop, I didn't need to. She was trying to fix it, scramble for a lifeline, call in favors she'd never bothered to earn. But most people only answer the phone when they feel valued, not used. And I had a feeling her call log wasn't getting shorter. One night, I came home from work and found her sitting in the dark on the couch, knees pulled up, hoodie zipped all the way. She looked younger somehow, smaller than the sister who once mocked me in my own kitchen. She didn't say anything as I walked past her, just sat there, staring at nothing like she was waiting for some divine do-over. I should have felt vindicated, but I didn't. I felt tired of playing the role of caretaker, of being the backdrop to her crisis, tired of pretending things hadn't been broken for a long time. The thing is, you don't just get over betrayal. You don't erase 3 years of being manipulated with one apology and a few packed boxes. Trust doesn't grow back once it's been laughed at behind your back. Still, I let her stay those final days without pushing. No snide comments, no reminders of her deadline, just silence and space. Maybe part of me wanted to believe she'd leave with dignity. Maybe part of me still clung to the version of her I once protected. On the 12th day, she asked if we could talk. I said yes, but I didn't stop folding laundry. She stood in the doorway, hands clenched at her sides. "I've got a place lined up. It's not ideal, but it'll do for now," she said. I nodded. "That's good." She hesitated. "It's further out, not near the city. Just until I figure things out." I kept folding, a slow rhythm. "It's a start." Her voice dropped. "You really meant it, all of this." I looked up. I had to. She blinked, then laughed once, bitter and soft. "You know, I used to think you were too nice for your own good. Turns out you were just patient." That one hit different. Not a compliment, but not an insult either. Like maybe for the first time, she saw the cost of everything I'd given. I finished the last shirt and stacked it on top of the pile. "You always had options, Lena. You just didn't want to use them unless you had to." She didn't argue, just nodded slowly. "Guess I got comfortable being carried." "Guess you forgot I had limits," I replied. She stayed quiet for a while, then finally turned and walked back to her room. The door didn't slam. It clicked shut, gentle this time. The next morning, I woke up and the house was still. I didn't hear her usual shuffle in the hallway or the clink of coffee cups. I checked the guest room. Empty. Sheets folded. Closet bare. The little potted plant she'd claimed as hers was gone. Just like that, she was out. No dramatic farewell, no tearful goodbye. Just a quiet exit and a dent in the carpet where her suitcase used to sit. On the counter, I found a note, folded in half, plain white paper. It just said, "Thanks for letting me stay. Sorry I took advantage of it. I'll figure it out, L." I stared at it for a while. No emotion rose up, no anger, no sadness, just a strange kind of stillness, like walking out into snow and hearing nothing but the sound of your own breath. It was over. 3 years of imbalance, of excuses, of guilt wrapped in a sister's smile, gone in a single folded piece of paper. I left it on the counter for a few days, not out of sentiment, but because it felt like a marker proof that it had really happened, that I wasn't crazy for finally drawing the line. Days passed, then a week. The house adjusted to her absence quicker than I expected. No more empty oat milk cartons, no more random laundry left in the washer, no more passive-aggressive playlists blasting from the shower. I could hear my thoughts again, hear myself breathe. The silence wasn't lonely, it was clean. Like wiping fog off a mirror and seeing yourself clearly for the first time in years. I started doing little things I'd forgotten I enjoyed. Cooking for one and actually sitting at the table. Playing music in the mornings without worrying about who was sleeping. Lighting candles without hearing someone whine about how strong they smelled. I reclaimed my space, my rhythm, my peace. Then, one afternoon, I got a call from our mom. I let it ring 4 times before answering. "Hey, sweetheart," she said, voice too casual. "Just checking in. Everything okay?" I knew what she was really asking. Lena had reached out. "I'm good," I said. "Quiet over here." "So, your sister mentioned she moved out?" I smiled slightly. "She did." She said, "You asked her to leave?" Mom said, a tinge of disappointment creeping in. "I asked her to pay rent. She chose to leave." There was a pause. "She's going through a lot, you know. Maybe this wasn't the time to push her out." I leaned against the counter, gripping the phone a little tighter. "Mom." She wasn't pushed. She made choices, I made boundaries. That's not the same thing. Another pause. Longer. "She said you embarrassed her, made her feel like she wasn't wanted." I bit down a laugh. Of course Lena spun it like that. "Did she also mention the video where she called me a fool for letting her live here for free? Or the part where she bragged about making more money while I covered her groceries?" Silence. "I didn't think so," I said. "Look, I'm not mad. I'm just done being the only one giving." Mom sighed. "She's your sister, I know, but I'm not her doormat." There wasn't much else to say after that. We ended the call on stiff politeness. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt lighter. That's the thing about boundaries. People who benefited from your lack of them will always see them as betrayal. But they're not. They're protection. A week later, I saw Lena's name pop up on my phone. Not a call, just a message. "I found a place. Tiny, ugly, but it's mine. Thanks for forcing me to grow up." I won't forget it. I stared at it for a long moment. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. Then I typed back, "Good. I meant what I said. I hope you figure it out. No emojis, no jokes, just truth." She didn't reply. And that was fine. She didn't need to. She had her own keys now. And I had my house back. Not just the walls and furniture. The peace. The space to exhale. To stretch without flinching. To trust that the quiet meant safety, not tension. The storm had passed. And for once, it didn't take me with it. Life didn't immediately get easier after she left. In fact, for a while, things got messier in a different way. Quieter, sure, but not calmer. It's funny how peace doesn't just arrive like a package at your door. You have to earn it, sit with it, let it settle before it feels real. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, and in a way, it did, but not from Lena. It came from the rest of the family. The ones who hadn't seen a single grocery bill or paid a cent toward keeping her lights on. Word travels fast when guilt wants a new target. I got my first passive-aggressive message from Aunt Clara 3 days after Lena moved out. It was wrapped in concern, coded in judgment. "Hope everything's okay. Heard you kicked your sister out. That must have been hard for both of you." I stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply, then locked my phone and walked away. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Not after 3 years of holding things together in silence. But of course, silence never stays quiet when gossip fills the gaps. Then came the calls. Uncle Rob asking if I was mad about something else, and just took it out on Lena. My cousin Mateo, yes, the same Mateo who laughed in that backyard video, sending a voice note acting confused, like he hadn't been in the background cackling while she trashed me. They all suddenly had opinions about my boundaries, as if my home was some communal experiment in forgiveness and unpaid rent. I kept my responses short, polite, firm. I wasn't playing defense anymore. Let them think what they wanted. The people who matter don't need a play-by-play. And the ones demanding one, they were never really on my side to begin with. A few even tried to say Lena was just going through it, as if that phrase was a coupon you could exchange for unlimited grace. But here's the thing. Struggle doesn't excuse manipulation. It doesn't erase mocking someone who helped you, or treating kindness like currency you're entitled to spend without ever paying back. If they couldn't see that, I wasn't going to convince them. Still, it stung. Even if I knew better, part of me wanted at least one person to say, "You did the right thing." That validation we all claim we don't need, but secretly crave. I didn't get it. Not from them, anyway. But about 2 weeks after Lena left, I ran into someone unexpected at the corner store. Jasmine. We'd been friends in college, drifted apart when life got loud. But there she was, hair tied up, hoodie on, holding a bag of lemons like it was a mission. "Danny?" She blinked, then smiled. "Wow, I haven't seen you since." She trailed off, probably realizing she didn't want to bring up that last time Lena had embarrassed me at a dinner, and Jasmine had been too awkward to step in. "It's been a minute," I said, forcing a half smile. We chatted, easy at first, and then something shifted. She leaned in a bit, eyes lowering. "Hey, I saw that video, the one with Lena at your parents' place. Someone forwarded it to my sister. She showed me." I froze. My heart did that weird drop thing. "Did you?" I didn't even finish the question. She shook her head fast. "No, I didn't share it. I just got, Danny, I'm sorry. That was brutal." I let out a slow breath. "Yeah, it was." She looked at me, softer now. "You didn't deserve that, none of it." I nodded. "I know." We talked for a few more minutes. And when I left, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. Because for the first time, someone who saw it didn't try to excuse it. She just acknowledged the truth. And sometimes, that's all we need. Not a solution, just someone who sees things clearly. Meanwhile, Lena's texts trickled in like slow drips from a leaky faucet. Not often, not emotional, just little check-ins. "Started a new job. It's fine. That cheap apartment has ants. I'm dealing with it. Got a space heater. Winter sucks." I didn't always reply, but I read them. Each one felt like a quiet admission that maybe she was starting to understand. That real life costs something. That your choices do echo. I didn't need her to say sorry every time. I just needed her to stop pretending she was owed the world for existing in it. But not all her messages were neutral. One night, she sent a photo. A cheap, tiny Christmas tree in the corner of her new place. The caption just read, "It's not much, but I decorated it myself. First time in years." I stared at it longer than I expected. The ornaments were mismatched, the lights crooked, but it felt real. Like she'd stopped waiting for someone to rescue her and finally stood up on her own. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. A few days later, I got a knock on the door. I opened it expecting a package, but it was Uncle Gabe, the only one who'd kept his mouth shut through all of this. The one who sent me that video in the first place. He stepped inside without asking, like he used to when I was a kid, dropping his keys in the bowl like it was still his house. "You look better," he said simply. "More grounded." "I feel better," I said. He sat on the couch, eyeing the empty space where Lena's boxes used to live. "So, she's out?" "She's on her own," I corrected. "Good," he nodded. "She needed that. You needed that." I poured us coffee, something steady about the act, and we talked. Really talked. About how long I'd been holding everything in. About how he saw the cracks before I did. And when I finally asked him why he sent me the video, he looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Because I knew you'd keep giving until there was nothing left of you." And I couldn't watch that happen again. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded, and we sat in silence. Comfortable this time. When he left, I stood at the door a while, looking out at the street. It was getting colder. The kind of chill that wraps around your ribs and reminds you that endings are never warm, but they are clean. And sometimes that's what we need. Not fireworks. Not closure wrapped in a bow. Just the space to move forward without dragging weight that was never yours to carry. That night, I looked around the house. It was quiet. Mine. I lit a candle, the strong lavender one Lena used to complain about, and let it burn for hours. No one stopped me. No one rolled their eyes. And that smell? That smell was freedom. The days blurred into each other after that. It wasn't dramatic or exciting, just simple and quiet, which was exactly what I needed. I went to work, came home, cooked meals that stayed untouched until I was ready to eat them. The house no longer felt like a place I had to retreat into. It felt like something I had rebuilt from the inside out. Even the air was different, lighter. I rearranged the living room one weekend just because I could. Shifted the couch to the window, moved a plant that had been dying in the shadows. I bought a new coffee table, something clean and minimal that made the space feel fresh. It wasn't about furniture. It was about reclaiming a space that had slowly stopped feeling like mine. while I was too distracted to notice. Around that time, Lena's updates slowed. Once every 2 weeks maybe, and even then, it was just one-line status reports. I got a raise. The heater works now. Found a second-hand dresser. The tone changed though. Less edge, less performance. Just facts. Small facts that hinted at growth. I didn't always reply. Sometimes I just read and nod to myself, like I was listening through a closed door. I didn't want to let her back in too quickly, but I also didn't need to hold the door shut forever. Still, I wasn't expecting her to show up again, not in person. When the knock came on a Sunday morning, I thought it was the neighbor returning the hedge clippers. I opened the door in sweats and socks, and found her standing there, hands stuffed in her jacket pockets, hair pulled back in a way that made her look unfamiliar. Grown, almost. For a second, we both just stared at each other. No smiles, no warmth, just this silent assessment of who we had become since the last time we stood face to face. "Hey," she said finally, her voice low. I didn't move. "You didn't text first." She nodded, looking down. "I know, I didn't want to give you time to say no." I stepped back, just enough to let her in, but didn't invite her past the doorway. She took the hint and stayed close to the threshold, eyes scanning the room like it had changed in ways she hadn't expected. "It looks different," she said. I crossed my arms. "It is." She chewed on her lip for a second, then pulled something out of her coat. A photo, an old one. Us as kids, probably 8 and 11, sitting on the swing in the backyard, faces smeared with popsicle juice, laughing like nothing bad could ever touch us. "I found this in a box." "I don't even remember when it was taken," she said, handing it to me. I looked at it. The colors faded, but the memory's still bright. "I do. It was the day Dad built that swing set too close to the fence and we both crashed into it." She laughed once, soft. "Right. You cried so hard and I told you to suck it up. You told me I was weak." "Yeah," she said, eyes drifting. "I guess that was a theme." I didn't answer. I just stared at the photo, at our younger faces frozen in a version of us that had disappeared somewhere between high school and heartbreak. She stepped back, not out the door, but toward it. "I didn't come here to make you feel bad," she said. "I just wanted you to know I'm okay. Not perfect, but figuring it out. And I know I owe you more than an apology, but I also know you don't owe me anything at all." I looked at her for a long time, trying to match this version of her to the girl in the video. And the thing is, I couldn't. Not completely. She didn't look smug anymore. She looked tired in the way people do when they finally stopped running from themselves. "You could have sent all this in a text," I said. She nodded. "I know. But I didn't want my last memory of us to be that eviction notice taped to a door. That hit something in me I hadn't prepared for. I wanted to stay cold, wanted to protect the new foundation I'd built. But I also couldn't deny that seeing her now, owning her mistakes, without spinning them into jokes or pity plays, felt different. She wasn't here to manipulate. She wasn't here to charm her way back in. She was just here, trying. I exhaled slowly. "I'm not mad anymore, but I'm not ready to forget it either." "I wouldn't ask you to," she said. "I just wanted to show you that I'm not that girl in the video anymore." I nodded once, slowly. "You've got your own keys now. That's good. Keep using them." She smiled faintly. "I will." She didn't ask to come in. She didn't try to linger. She just gave me a small wave, turned, and walked back down the steps like someone who had learned to leave when the moment was complete. I watched her go, that photo still in my hand, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt something shift, not backward, not forward, just inward. Like I could finally hold the past without letting it dictate the next page. I tucked the photo into the drawer by the door, not out of sight, just out of reach. A reminder, not a shrine. That night, I lit another candle, curled up on the couch, and let the silence stretch again, this time with a softness that didn't feel like loneliness. Just space, just air, just me. I didn't tell anyone she came by, not because it was a secret, but because some things don't need to be shared to be real. Some moments exist just to close a chapter, not with fireworks. Just with a quiet, clean breath that says you're no longer carrying what once tried to bury you. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady, grounded, whole in a way that didn't need an audience. That was enough. I didn't expect peace to be so quiet. Not empty, not lonely, just still. No one asking for favors. No one tiptoeing around boundaries they never respected. Just quiet mornings with warm coffee, long walks without explaining where I was going. Dinners that stayed simple because they only had to feed me. It wasn't dramatic, this new version of life. It was steady, soft in a way I didn't know I needed. I hadn't realized how much space Lena had taken up until she was no longer in it. The way her presence lingered even in rooms she wasn't in. How her needs became the background noise I'd gotten used to ignoring until I couldn't. But now, weeks after her visit, I noticed the things she used to interrupt. The weekend routines I reclaimed. The sleep that came easier. The thoughts that flowed without the weight of someone else's problems pressed against them. I didn't hate her. I didn't even resent her anymore. But I'd learned something important that I wasn't willing to unlearn just to keep people comfortable. Love without boundaries isn't love, it's obligation in disguise. And I was done living under that spell. Lena kept her distance after that last visit. A few more texts, simple ones. Updates about her job, a new coworker she liked, a class she signed up for at the community college. She wasn't trying to pull me in anymore. She was just sending out signals, like radio waves, letting me know she was still there but not expecting a reply. Sometimes I answered, sometimes I didn't. There was no pressure either way. For once, it felt balanced, honest. She was learning to exist without leaning, and I was learning how to breathe without bracing. Around the third month, I got a text that made me stop what I was doing and just sit with it for a while. It read, "Found an apartment closer to the city. It's small but has light." I signed the lease on my own. First time I've done that. It felt like winning. I stared at the message, reread it 3 times, then smiled without realizing. Because that right there was the moment I'd been waiting for, not for her to say thank you, not even for an apology, but for her to finally stand on her own and feel the ground steady beneath her. She didn't owe me anything now, and I didn't owe her rescue. That balance, that mutual space, it was something we'd never had until we were forced to learn it the hard way. A week later, I visited my parents. Not because I had to, not because of guilt, but because I felt like I could walk in without carrying a story on my back. My mom brought up Lena over lunch, cautiously, like she wasn't sure where the cracks were anymore. She said, "You two spoke recently," she offered, slicing into her salad too carefully. Briefly, I said, "She's doing all right." My dad nodded, eyes flicking up. "She's always been a little lost. You've always had it more together." I didn't reply to that. I didn't need to correct it, but I wasn't going to validate it either. It wasn't about who had it together. It was about who learned to stop surviving at someone else's expense. That night, as I drove home, I thought about how strange it is to outgrow a dynamic you never asked for. I used to think being the dependable one was a compliment, like it meant I was stronger. But now I understood what it really meant. I was the one expected to bend, to absorb, to carry. And people stopped asking if I was okay because I was too good at pretending I always was. Not anymore. I wasn't interested in being the emotional pack mule for other people's messes. I could help, but not at the cost of my peace. I could care, but not without limits. And I could love deeply even, but only in ways that didn't bury me in return. I started spending time with people who didn't expect me to shrink to make them feel taller. Old friends. New ones. Coworkers who turned into companions over shared frustrations and Friday night takeout. People who showed up, not because they needed something, but because they wanted to be there. It was wild, in the quietest way, to realize how little I demanded of the world while asking so much of myself. How I'd been taught to be low maintenance, like it was a badge of honor. How rarely I'd ask for anything without apologizing first. But something had changed. Not overnight, not loudly. Slowly, like breath filling a room, like sunlight returning after weeks of rain. And I liked who I was becoming. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't cynical. I just stopped negotiating with people who mistook kindness for currency. One evening I was sitting on the back porch, watching the sky fade from gold to blue, when a message came in. From Lena. "Just one sentence, I'm proud of you too, you know." It was random, unprompted, but real. I read it once, smiled, and closed my phone. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I didn't need to. Some things are meant to be left hanging in the air, like a feather suspended on a breeze light. Simple enough. I leaned back, let the quiet wrap around me, and thought about how far I'd come. About the girl who once thought keeping the peace meant keeping herself small. About the sister who used my silence like a cushion until I finally pulled it out from under her. About the version of me who believed setting boundaries was a betrayal when it was really a beginning. I didn't win. There was no scoreboard. No dramatic last scene where I watched her life fall apart in revenge. It wasn't that kind of story. It was better. Because I walked away whole. Because I came home to myself. Because the house was mine again, not just in deed, but in spirit. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. Really living. That night, I curled into the couch with no noise but my own breathing, no tension hiding in the corners, no footsteps I had to anticipate, just stillness. And me. And that, I realized, was the quietest kind of freedom. The kind no one can take back. The kind you earn, not through revenge or rage, but through release, through choosing yourself over and over again until the world learns how to meet you there. Story 2. With the exception of the refrigerator's soft hum, the flat was quiet. Until now, I had never heard this sound. I was Penelope Hayes, sitting on my old leather couch with my phone in my hands late at night in March 2025. Its edges seemed icy to my fingers, like if they knew something I didn't. An hour ago, Ethan had sent an SMS. I had mentored the 24-year-old junior analyst 3 years prior. I wanted to make sure you saw this before Monday. It only read a video attachment with no context. I hit the play button. The screen came to light with a flicker. My 20-year employer, Michael Reynolds, was standing in the center of the company's yearly staff celebration. He was rumpled in his gray suit. His voice had that distinctive baritone, and a whiskey glass gleamed in his palm. For 20 years, I had evaded responsibility and heard bark instructions. Cut through the commotion, he replied with a smile that split his face. Penelope is such a worthless, dumb ass. We're getting rid of her next month. She won't even anticipate it. There was a ripple effect from the individuals surrounding him, including my coworkers, with whom I had gone out for coffee and worked late hours. Some of them laughed sharply and nervously. Others moved, averting their gazes. Nobody defended me in any way. I gazed at the display. Before I could stop it, the 30-21 clip began to loop. My chest constricted. My throat is starting to burn sharply and acidically. My 20 years with Reynolds and Carter Consulting seemed to fly by. Long evenings, squatting down, spreadsheets. Missed my sister's children's birthdays. Michael would spend his weekends refining reports so he could appear brilliant when he walked into client meetings. I had smoothed over his inebriated tirades at conferences, covered for his errors, and even stood up for him when rumors of his ineptitude became too loud. And this was my prize. A joke spoken in front of a laughing audience. I made myself listen to it again by playing it again. She won't even anticipate it. His conceit was thick and pompous, leaking from every word. It was something hotter that made my hands shake, not dread. Out of the pit of my stomach, something fought its way forward, anger and embarrassment. Then there was a spark underneath it all, clear, icy, and uncompromising resolve. Michael believed that I was too innocent, a devoted puppy, and too stupid to retaliate. He was mistaken, completely incorrect. I wasn't only seeing my betrayal by the time the film played for the third time. I was plotting his downfall. Soon enough, the crowd he had performed for would watch another concert, and I would be the one in the limelight. That night, I didn't get any sleep. The bedroom was a dark cavern. Above me, the ceiling stretches like a blank canvas for my rushing thoughts. The phone was left on the nightstand like a live wire that I was never allowed to touch again, and I lay still in my perspiration. Michael's voice reverberated throughout my head, stupid and worthless. My flesh is splintered by every syllable. 20 years. I'd done everything I could for Reynolds and Carter, every canceled plan, every late night. I'd saved his ass more times than I could remember. Every time I'd remained silent when he claimed credit for my labor. He had also made myself into a joke. Something changed inside of me as I followed the fissures in the plaster with my gaze. The pain remained, sharp and raw, but it was solidifying into something else. I recalled all the reports I had revised for him, all the clients I had won over while he struggled. He was not the genius he claimed to be. He had just given me the match to burn down his house, and I was. I had already decided by the time the first gray light peeked through the blinds. Michael was going to find out just how mistaken he was if he thought I would go quietly, and if he thought I would slink into Monday without noticing his knife. I didn't require rest. I required a strategy, and I sensed the first strands of it tying together tightly, purposefully, and with enough edge to cut as the clock ticked toward daybreak. At 7:55 a.m., I entered Reynolds and Carter. As usual, the typical Monday hummed around the office. Keyboards clacking, phones ringing. Like a bad omen, the subtle scent of burned coffee permeated the air. I had a steady pulse. I wore a mask of composure that I had developed over years of putting up with Michael's bullshit. I wore a clean white shirt and a smart black jacket. Because this was no ordinary day. The game has just begun. The door to Michael's office was ajar. A lighthouse of conceit. James, a 50-year-old CFO who had always been too ready to kiss the ring, laughed with him as he sat back in his chair. I stopped and let my shadow slide across the carpet at the doorway. "Good morning, Michael." My smile curled just enough to appear normal as I spoke in a courteous tone. I caught a glimpse of his eyes flicking to mine, something under his smile. Smugness, not remorse or reluctance. As thick as the whiskey he'd been holding on Saturday. "Enjoy your weekend." His tone was casual, as if he hadn't just made fun of me in front of a crowd 48 hours prior. I looked him in the eye and nodded. Fantastic weekend. Feeling rejuvenated for yet another successful month. He grinned more broadly, a predator confident in his victim. He leaned in a little, as though he was daring me to recoil, and added, "That's what I like to hear." I didn't. After turning, I went to my desk and took a seat. His ignorance was like a veil hanging over me. He believed he had me in a tight spot, a lamb awaiting its killing. I had previously sharpened the knife, but he was unaware of it. I felt the pulse of the office. The copier wheezes in the corner while interns shuffle papers. However, my thoughts were elsewhere. With my fingers lingering over the keys, I opened my laptop and let the facade to lock into position. I'd play the part for the time being. Penelope, loyal, oblivious, and obedient. However, I was already shifting components below it. He was unable to tell if he believed that I would heedlessly stroll into my own execution. I was completely unknown to him. His laughter drifted out like a taunt as I looked back at his office. I thought, "Enjoy it, Michael. This is the final time you will make fun of me." He hadn't even rolled the dice when the game started, and I was 3 steps ahead. It was a show for the following 4 weeks. Every motion was meticulously practiced. Counting down Michael's days, I came into Reynolds and Carter every morning with the same calm grin, my heels clicking like a metronome across the tile. Phones were trilling the printer's endless whine as the office hummed around me. However, I was a ghost in the midst of the mayhem, posing as the ideal worker. I contributed solutions with just the right amount of zeal, nodded in meetings, and took on extra work without complaining. With the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead and other people's fingers fluttering over my keyboard, late nights turned into my haven. However, I was no longer polishing reports for Michael. I had a hidden folder full of emails that I was gathering. Each thoughtless instruction he had sent, each sarcastic remark hidden in a thread. Then came contracts. Each one, which I either drafted or saved, was evidence of the work he had claimed to have done, reports on finances. James had approved 2 careless figures on gaps I had discreetly filled for years. Most people wouldn't give these scraps much thought, but I did. I re-examined everything that lay beneath the surface. To pull Michael down, I was constructing a net, thread by thread. And it wasn't just paper I gathered. I reached out to old clients. The ones who'd stayed loyal to me, not him. Casual calls, a subtle hint. "I'm considering new opportunities." Their responses were immediate. "Eager, Penelope, we'd follow you anywhere." I smiled into the receiver, filing their trust away for later. Then there was the attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, mid-30s, who met me over coffee downtown. I laid out the groundwork. Severance clauses, non-compete, the legal edges. I could dance along. She nodded, pen-tapping her notepad. "You've got options," she said. "Play this right and he'll feel it where it hurts." I left with her card and a plan taking shape. The final piece clicked when I dialed Pearson Associates, a competitor that had been sniffing around Reynolds and Carter for months. Their VP, a clipped voice named Laura, didn't hesitate. "We've heard about you, Penelope. Let's talk." I hung up, staring at the city lights beyond my window. Michael's whiskey-soaked laugh from that video looped in my mind, fueling every step. I wasn't just leaving. I was taking everything he took for granted with me. Client's credibility, control, 4 weeks of smiling through the lie, and I was ready to pull the first string. The morning of my final day broke gray and heavy, the air thick with a tension only I could feel. I arrived at Reynolds and Carter early, before the sun had fully risen, my laptop bag slung over my shoulder like a weapon. The office was quiet, just the hum of the HVAC and the faint drip of the coffee machine. I settled at my desk, watching the minutes tick toward the endgame across the floor. Michael's office glowed. He was in there laughing with James again, their voices carrying like they owned the world. Oblivious, arrogant. I let my gaze linger, a polite smile fixed on my face, masking the storm brewing beneath. The day crawled forward. Normalcy, a thin veneer over the shift I sensed coming. I answered emails, nodded at coworkers, kept my posture relaxed even as my pulse throbbed with purpose. At 3 p.m., the door to Michael's office swung wider, and Rachel, from air, stepped inside her face, carefully neutral. She didn't glance my way, but I knew. My phone stayed silent, a coiled snake waiting to strike. Then at 3:30, it lit up. "Michael Reynolds, please come to my office." The summons I'd anticipated for weeks. I exhaled slowly, smoothing my blow with steady hands. This wasn't a surprise. It was a stage, and I'd memorized my lines. I stood, feeling the weight of 20 years shift. Not a burden anymore, but a lever. Michael thought he'd catch me off guard, call me in with some rehearsed speech about budgets and restructuring. He had no idea I was already 3 steps ahead, The trap set and waiting, I crossed the floor, heels clicking. Showtime. I knocked on Michael's door, stepping inside with the same polite smile I'd worn all month. The office smelled of leather and stale ambition. Rachel seated across from him with a company-issued folder in front of her standard air protocol, a scene I'd witnessed from the other side too many times. Michael put on his best fake sympathy. Leaning back in his chair like a king, granting an audience, "Penelope, please have a seat," he said, voice measured, scripted. I sat, folding my hands in my lap, meeting his gaze without a flicker. "We appreciate your dedication to the company over the last 20 years." He began the words hollow as they rolled off his tongue. "But as you know, the industry is evolving and we've had to make some difficult decisions regarding staffing." Rachel stayed silent, her eyes on the folder. "We've decided to restructure your role," he continued, "and unfortunately your position is being phased out." She slid the folder across the table, a severance package wrapped in corporate courtesy. I didn't touch it. "We aim to facilitate a seamless transition," he added, eyeing me. He anticipated tears, wrath, uncertainty, anything to fuel his ego. Instead, I smiled, gentle and steady. "I understand," I said. He blinked, a flash of apprehension crossing his features. "Too simple to clean." He cleared his throat. "We'll need your corporate laptop and access badge by the end of the day. And of course, a non-disclosure agreement detailing operations." I nodded, remaining calm. They wanted me silent, a ghost disappearing without a murmur. Then he leaned forward. The voice falls into a false sense of warmth. "You're talented, Penelope, but I know this must be hard. You'll land on your feet, I'm sure." I cocked my head slightly to make him uneasy. My voice was as calm as glass when I replied, "Oh, I know I will." His moment of comfort was fleeting and misdirected, and then I rose up, grinning the same way, and picked up the folder. I left. I feel as though the burden of 20 years has been lifted. It was my win, not his. I could burn it all down now. As I returned to my desk, I could see that my last hours as an employee were drawing near 5 p.m. I made a deliberate step, archiving every email, project file, and customer contract I came into contact with. As long as I had access, it was all completely lawful. The typical end-of-day conversation filled the office. My coworkers were unaware that I was igniting a fuse. I started a fresh email and sent it to Thomas Bennett, our largest customer and the source of 40% of our income for the last 10 years. After hovering my fingers, I typed, "Hello, Thomas." With my impending resignation from Reynolds and Carter, I wanted to express my gratitude for our collaboration over the years. I will soon be available for consultation. I'd love to talk about how I can help your business even more. If you want to schedule a call, let me know. I sent it. I packed the laptop I would give up, along with pencils and a picture of my niece, smiling and saying goodbye to coworkers. Just another worker heading off at precisely 5 o'clock. The glass doors behind me hissed as I left. I didn't turn around. Michael was unaware of what I had just let loose, but he would soon sense it. My phone was ringing against the nightstand when I woke up the morning after I left. The sound was startling amid my apartment's silence. I looked at the screen. By 10 a.m., I was able to identify the person to whom Reynolds and Carter had tracked 3 missed calls, all from unknown extensions. As the 4th phone rang, I laid back against my pillows and smiled slowly. Daniel believed he could keep this under control, that the repercussions would come a few days later. His conceit was accelerating the clock, and he had miscalculated me once more. By midday, Penelope received a buzzing text from Ethan. "The office is in complete breakdown mode, regardless of what you accomplished." Thomas terminated his agreement. "Michael is going crazy." I burst out laughing. The sound reverberated off the exposed walls. The customer I'd emailed on my way out, Thomas Bennett, had seen the warning signs. No stability, no incentive to remain. Penelope. My phone came back to life at 2:30 p.m., this time displaying Michael Reynolds' name. I replied in a cool, almost bored tone. "Hi there?" Through the line came a harsh breath. Then his voice was controlled and tight. "I recently learned about Thomas, Penelope. You reached out," he said. I enjoyed his uneasiness as I allowed the stillness to grow. "Yes, I did." "Just a little quiet," I said. Then he made himself laugh. "It's fragile. Listen, I believe there was a misunderstanding. This was only workplace chit-chat. You are aware of that." My voice was shut off. "It's dangerously late. Michael, the first don't harbor resentment. I simply make wise choices." His chest constricted. There was a slight hiccup that I could really sense over the phone. "Are you employed by another company?" With a hint of desperation, he pressed. I twirled a pen between my fingers and grinned. "How that relates to you is beyond me." I hung up the phone as he swore under his breath, adding a punctuation point to his growing terror. Michael was only starting to comprehend how terrible his error had been, and Thomas had also made a wise choice. I entered Pearson Associates' downtown office that afternoon. The modern glass walls stand in sharp contrast to Reynolds and Carter's antiquated mess. I was welcomed with a hard handshake from the 52-year-old CEO, David Pierce. Behind wire-rimmed glasses, his eyes were sharp. He led me to a conference room and said, "Penelope, the instant I found out you were going, my team was observing. The ship of Michael is sinking." He leaned forward with his elbows resting on the table, while I settled into a leather chair and smiled knowingly. I said, "And you want to exploit that?" He grinned. "I want to win for both of us." I took a file out of my bag. I had made projections from memory, renewals of clients. I kept tabs on Michael's contracts and vulnerabilities, which I had used for years to keep them afloat. I moved it over the table. "Start here if you want to defeat them." As he turned the pages, David's face darkened with delight as he looked over the names, the numbers, and the power I'd given him. "It's gold." He looked up after muttering, "You're not giving this away for free, I presume?" I leaned back and grinned. "No, I'm not." His smile got bigger. "A predator identifying a victim. Let's discuss terminology." When I departed, the agreement was finalized. I wasn't only going with Pierce. Michael's clients were coming with me. A migration would be like a kick to the belly. My first shot was the file, but the main blow would come when those contracts began to slip from his hands. I would be observing from the opposite side of the battlefield as Michael came to understand what true panic felt like. "I have coffee." I sat in a corner office at Pierce with a view of the skyline on Monday morning. At 8:15, Ethan's subsequent text message buzzed through. Michael just barged into the main office. "Penelope, holy crap. It appears that he has not slept. He's going to blow up, I promise." I grinned as I imagined him yelling at subordinates as his voice cracked and his tie was tattered. 3 significant clients that I had supported over 10 years of Michael's missteps had received termination notices from the first wave before the doors had even opened. Michael couldn't have predicted how quickly Pierce had moved, and I was the mastermind behind it all. The fissures turned into fractures by 9:00. As legal frantically looked for ways to catch the escaping clients, James had isolated himself in his office, calculating the damage. But Michael was on the phones. He pleaded with executives to remain, his voice hoarse. "Please." That was heard by others who had previously listened to my silent assurances. He gave me another call at 12:30. His voice was tense and strained. He snapped at Penelope. "We've got a big problem, and I'm not sure what you've been telling folks." He couldn't see it, but I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, what sort of issue?" He gave a quick breath. "You are fully aware of what sort it is. 3 other accounts have taken out millions of dollars in earnings overnight since Thomas left. Did you?" Unwilling to utter it, he paused. I waited for a moment before speaking carefully and calmly. "Reynolds and Carter is no longer where I work. Michael, I don't care what happens to your business." After a brief pause, his tone became abrasive. "I take it that you work for Pierce?" I grinned. "How that relates to you is beyond me." I could just feel him clutching his desk, power seeping through his fingertips as he swore harder this time. "Penelope, this industry is tiny. Do you wish to avoid causing rifts?" I gave a little chuckle. "Cold and purposeful. When you labeled me a useless, stupid ass in front of the whole organization, you ruined that relationship." I hung up the phone in horror as he became silent. More charming than an apology. Ethan texted again at 3 p.m. "The board has convened an emergency meeting. Investors are going crazy. Discuss replacing Michael." With a wave of contentment, I reclined. After years of hiding behind my job, the horrible reality was suddenly exposed, and he was dying more quickly than he could cry out. I entered Reynolds and Carter on Tuesday morning. As a warning, not as an employee. Tension was buried deep in the office. Whispers behind screens took the place of the normal conversation, and I saw brief looks. I walked across the floor. The sound of heels continued till I arrived at Michael's office. His raspy voice rasped through the door as I knocked. I entered. "I'm putting that behind me." He took a seat at his desk. His eyes were bruised, with dark circles and a loose tie. His conceit was exposed. Mirroring our fire scene from a week ago, I sat down opposite him and cocked my head. "Michael, how's it going?" My voice was light as I asked. His jaw tightened, a muscle jerking. "Penelope, stop the nonsense. What are you looking for?" I let the question linger on my lips as I grinned. "I simply wanted to check in with you." The sound of his sour chuckle scraped the air. "Oh, you are aware of my condition." "Yes, I did." He inhaled deeply, bending forward. "Look, what would it take to make this right if it could be fixed?" His voice was heavy with desperation. I had been waiting for this capitulation. Leaning close, I spoke in a stern yet gentle tone. Michael, this cannot be fixed. His eyes fluttered with defeat, but his face stiffened. I straightened my blazer as I stood. Take pleasure in being unemployed. I turned to go, but before I did, I said, I looked back, making the last incision he had never anticipated. Then I was gone, abandoning him in the disaster he had created. By Friday, Michael's demise was plastered on every screen as the news struck like a thunderclap. At Reynolds & Carter, I scrolled past a significant client departure. One said CEO under fire. In a calculated maneuver, Pierce & Companions acquire important clientele, and they crowd another. I sipped coffee in my new Pierce office. The joy that was rolling up inside of me was perfectly matched by the bitter brew. The world watched as Michael's swagger and the empire he had built on my sweat crumbled into dust. Ethan's SMS buzzes through at 10 in the morning. Penelope, this will be unbelievable to you. An urgent meeting of investors. Michael is allegedly being forced to leave. I smiled to myself as I leaned back. Exactly on time. The internal email from Reynolds & Carter verified it. At 3 p.m., Michael Reynolds has resigned as CEO with immediate effect. Soon, a temporary leadership group will be revealed. I read it twice, allowing the words to fully register. Dismissed. Humiliated in public. Lost. Then my email pinging again at 5:30. Subject. Let's hear directly from Michael. The first took it open. His desperation was evident. Penelope, the situation has gotten out of hand. I am aware that you are responsible. Let's get together. Let's go on. Predictable. Horrible. The first steadily typed my back finger. There's nothing to talk about, Michael. There is no way to remedy this. Have a great weekend. With a click, I closed the final chapter of his career and clicked submit. I was just getting started, and he was done. I arrived at Pearson Associates offices on Monday morning as their newest senior partner. I acquired the title by demonstrating my superiority, not by groveling. In the executive lounge, David welcomed me. He shook hands firmly. He responded, "Welcome aboard, Penelope. I've heard that you've already had a significant influence." I grinned. I can feel the weight of possibilities bearing down on me. I enjoy efficiency. He laughed. Just what we require. This was more than a job. It was a new beginning, constructed according to my terms. My helper tentatively knocked that afternoon. Penelope, you have a guest. Reynolds, Michael. I nodded after raising an eyebrow. Bring him in. He walked slowly inside the door. He was a shadow of the guy he once was. Just worn-out eyes and a drawn face, no suit, no grin. You truly succeeded, he said in a hollow voice. I cocked my head. Michael, you ruined yourself. He gave a quick breath. I need a job. I got up and smiled icily into his eyes. You don't require employment. You must learn a lesson. Without saying another word, I dismissed him and turned back to my desk. I sat near the window that evening, holding a glass of wine. The sparkling metropolitan cityscape below. I triumph. A quiet toast to the future I'd claimed, I said. Story 3. I took a seat at the table's corner. The chandelier glistened like blood under crystal as I held the scarlet wine. The walls reverberated with laughter, slicing through the air, jagged and sharp. Jim's voice was sharp as he raised his glass. Sweetie, another month without a job? Try working at a coffee shop. His friends. Ethan. Ryan. Noah sprang out. Their drinks clinked, their smiles broad, their outfits immaculate. To my failure, a toast. I let my hair cover my face as I lowered my head, pretending to feel the sting they anticipated. Their laughter shone more brilliantly than the overhead illumination. They were unaware. How were they able to? Ethan grinning over his whiskey, my husband Jim, vice president of Horizon Tech, relaxing in his haughtiness. He laughed into his sleeve. Ryan. Noah is reclining like a monarch. They believed they were in charge of the room, the business, the globe. Senior executives enjoy their authority and are untouchable. The slightest twitch of a smile was hidden by the harsh flavor of my wine when I sipped it. They didn't recognize me. Mia Thompson is my name. My age is 38. From a single concept in a small flat, I transformed Horizon Tech into a market-dominating tech behemoth. I am the founder, the CEO, the one who signs their checks, authorizes their bonuses, gives them the go-ahead, and strokes their inflated egos. And my hubby is Jim. I've been playing this game for 7 years, assuming the role of the suffering wife, the nobody. He uses his income as support. He treated me like a lion tonight. As usual. Who knows? You may be fortunate. The table screamed one again as he crowded. I ran my finger over the rim of my glass, calm and steady. They were unaware of that. Their arrogant little dominion would fall apart in a matter of hours. To take away the contracts they boasted about, They displayed my titles, mine to reroute. They didn't own Horizon Tech. I owned it. It has always been. For years I had observed them strutting, the woman in the corners blind, while they were laughing, the person who had been manipulating chords. Jim's smile wavered for a moment when I looked at him. A glimmer of something, perhaps. He couldn't place the uneasiness. I returned the smile, kind and obedient, the manner he preferred. "Gentlemen, have a good evening," I spoke softly, hardly audible above their din. The edge was not heard by them. The cliff was invisible to them. They continued to dance. Everything is different tomorrow. I emerge from the shadows tomorrow. I let them chuckle for the time being. Give them a drink. Let them believe they have triumphed. It was a bitter wine, but it would taste sweeter to win. I've known Jim Harper for 7 years. I was 31. Recently founded Secret, an unheard of startup, and Horizon Tech. Not him at all. Charming and a rising star at a competing corporation, he was 35 years old. I could have been honest with him. Instead, I'm Mia Thompson, an entrepreneur whose firm is already drawing attention. I said a falsehood. I claimed to be a self-employed marketing analyst who was only getting started and making ends meet by taking on odd gigs. He purchased it wholeheartedly. Asked me to go out that evening. We were married. 6 months later, it was a test. I had created Horizon out of nothing. Incessant pitches and late nights, a risk that paid off. However, I was curious about Jim's true identity, what he would do if he believed I was powerless, not a status. I thus drove a beat-up Toyota, leased a small apartment, and dressed modestly. He didn't ask any questions. Initially, he was kind and encouraging. "It will come to you." "Me?" he would say. Put an arm over my shoulders. I softened. Knowing that my company was already surpassing his, I would nod while trying not to smile. That generosity was short-lived. Silently, Horizon blossomed under my true identity. He never made contact with me through shell businesses. I didn't reveal it. Telling him about lost clients and unsuccessful assignments, he began to move. Impatience took the place of encouragement, then sympathy. He would murmur as he scrolled through his phone, hardly looking up. "Freelancing is tough." I would mutter in agreement. Laundry folding in our tiny living room. I was signing multi-million-dollar transactions in my downtown office. I allowed him to believe he was the hero and the earner. He advanced and became VP of Horizon Tech, a position I approved of on false pretenses. He had no suspicion. I saw him transform. I watched the man with the mask come out. The experiment was too successful. He didn't simply feel sorry for me by the time I was 38. He hated me. A wife who lacks desire and a profession unworthy of his pride. I said nothing, allowing the untruth to spread and allowing him to construct his throne on the sand, because I was aware of something that he was not. I wasn't going to fall. The change was gradual. Over years, it infiltrated slowly and unsightly. Jim flourished on it, on being our story's savior. He was the golden boy of Horizon Tech, at 42, wearing well-tailored clothes and showing off a Rolex that I had indirectly purchased. I remained the fortunate wife and freelancer. He was in favor. Our flat remained small. He enjoyed the story, the lowly monarch. However, the warmth had vanished. When he got home, he would throw his keys on the counter and hardly look at me. I'd say it was a rough day. It wouldn't be clear to you. He'd yell while serving his team dinners and pouring a scotch. Noah, Ryan, and Ethan took center stage. They would congregate at our house or another fancy location. Sharper tongues and all sharp ties. I would sit quietly, his plays prop. Mia continues to pursue her big break. They would chuckle as he said it with a smile. A hyena chorus. I would give a nod, choose my meal, give them the impression that I was ashamed. I was counting every snare and every jab inside. Ethan would add his voice. Retail may be recruiting. Ryan, snort. No, would offer a drink. Jim thought it was fantastic. The power, the spotlight. The performance was at its best tonight. Jim stood court while the wine flowed and the chandelier shined. With sparkling eyes and a loud enough voice, he said, "Coffee shop assistant. Sweetheart, it could be your speed." Ethan slapped the wood as the table exploded. Ryan's drink is suffocating him. Noah's shark-like smile. I played the role by lowering my head and covering my face with my hair. They were unaware of my tighter hold on the glass or the change in air. I brought it up to my mouth, slow, intentional, experiencing its bite. They couldn't see. They boasted about those promotions. They were autographed by me, the spending plans under their authority. I had given them my blessing. Horizon Tech was my machine, my invention. They were cogs too. I had positioned. I had been holding him up, but Jim believed he was holding me up. His life and work for years. With a gentle clink against the table, I put the glass down. Jim, Have fun, I whispered. Their catch is too low. He didn't have to listen to it just yet. The curtain will rise tomorrow. 7 years of his games, his disdain. I had waited and watched. Tonight, let him dig his grave. He celebrated my failure. Unaware of the empire that lies beneath me, I grinned. A little secret. The kind he would never see. They continued to laugh, intoxicated by their own sound. I was sitting in the corner, steady, all set. It was the end of the shift. He had ended his reign. Jim's change in behavior served as my cue. His mask had been peeled back by years of ridicule. Suspicion, however, was insufficient. I needed proof, something ironclad, to shatter his world and his cronies with it. I began digging 2 years ago when I was 36. It began with whispers I overheard, boasts during those dinners and casual remarks regarding benefits and side deals. Jim and his crew, Ethan, Ryan, Noah, were sloppy too, comfortable in their power at Horizon Tech. I'd built the company to be a titan, but they were gnawing at its bones. I couldn't let it stand. I hired private investigators. The best money could buy. Discreet, ruthless, invisible. They detailed Jim first, shadowing him to late-night meetings in dimly lit bars, places he'd never take me. Photos came back, him shaking hands with executives from rival firms, passing envelopes under tables. Then Ethan caught at a yacht party funded by Horizon's accounts, grinning with suppliers who'd overcharged us for years. Ryan and Noah followed secret lunches, golf courses, deals whispered over cigars. The evidence piled up a paper trail of greed. I could have framed and hung on my wall, but I didn't stop there. Suspicion had teeth now, and I gave it claws. I installed a surveillance system within Horizon Tech's own infrastructure, an invisible net woven into emails, servers, phone lines. No one noticed. It reported to me, not Jim, though he'd never suspect it. The data flowed. Leaked bid prices to competitors, contracts rigged for kickbacks, company funds siphoned into offshore accounts. One email from Jim to Ethan stood out. Keep quiet. She's replaceable. About a junior staffer who'd complained of harassment. They'd buried her. Like they buried anyone who didn't bow. What I uncovered wasn't just corruption. It was rot. They weren't content skimming profits. They were selling Horizons, secrets piece by piece to line their pockets. Text messages bragged about it. Noah to Ryan. Another $1 million in the bag. They'll never trace it. Video clips showed Ethan mocking subordinates in meetings, his voice dripping with disdain. I found audio to Jim on a call, laughing about keeping the wife in the dark while he planned a bonus for himself with stolen funds. Every file, every recording, was a brick in the wall I'd build to crush them. I sat in my hidden office downtown, the city's hum faint through the glass, sifting through it all. 2 years of this watching, waiting, cementing had turned suspicion into a weapon. I had enough to send them to jail. But that wasn't the plan. Not yet. Horizon Tech was mine, and I'd reclaim it first. Strip them bare before the world. The investigators asked if I wanted more, but I shook my head. This was plenty. I needed one last piece, though. Proof of their culture, their cruelty. Straight from the source. So I decided to step into their lair myself. Not as Mia Thompson, but as someone they'd never suspect. The trap was set, and they'd walk right in. The evidence was a vault, locked and loaded. But I craved the raw truth of their world. How they treated the helpless. The ones they regarded beneath them. At 38, I crafted Sophie Miller, a struggling nobody with a fake resume, a modest suit, slightly scuffed shoes. I applied to Horizon Tech, my own company, for a low-level marketing job. The application went through HR people I'd hired, but who'd never seen my face. Days later, an email pinged. Interview scheduled 7th floor Tuesday. I grinned. They had no idea. I walked into the conference room, hair pushed back, shoulders slumped, just enough. 3 faces I knew. Stared back. Ethan, Ryan, Noah. Jim's inner circle stretched in their chairs like judges at a carnival. Ethan looked over my CV, sneering. Unemployed for a while, Sophie? His tone was a barb. Testing me. I gave a nod. Voice mild, hesitant. Indeed. It's been tricky finding the ideal match. A sneer tugged at Ryan's lips as he leaned forward to assess me. The market is cruel. This is inferior than hundreds. As I talked, Noah scrolled through his phone, not bothering to hide his disinterest. They only looked for weaknesses rather than questions regarding experience or abilities. Something to make fun of. I gave it to them while fumbling with the answers and letting my hands wander. Ethan made a sharp cut. What's the point of us bothering you? I muttered things they didn't want to hear, like diligence and hard effort. One by one, their phones buzzed halfway through. Noah looked at the TV and laughed. He smirked at Ethan and murmured, "You have to be kidding. I didn't have to search." Jim, who was most likely watching from his office and laughing at Sophie, the loser, had texted them. His spouse may have been. Their smiles widened, feeding on it. They tore me apart for 10 of the 15 minutes that the interview lasted. My resume was tossed aside like garbage by Ryan. He added, his voice brimming with phony sympathy, "We'll be in touch." Ethan dismissed me and stood all ready. Noah didn't even raise his head. I lowered my head, thanked them, and shuffled out the ideal image of failure. As the door closed behind me, I straightened up, and a small smile appeared on my face. They didn't need to call me back. I had witnessed everything. Their disdain, their careless brutality, and the poisonous mess they had created out of my presence. I shed Sophie like a skin back in my car. Her heels, hidden behind the seat, were kicked off by the worn shoes. They believed that I had been humiliated, but I had personally gone away with gold. Evidence of their decay. Their culture was founded on contempt. The files, the harassment, and the power outages all lined up. It was personal now. I had been energized by their disdain. They couldn't hear the trap snapping because they were too blind. The evidence was securely stored. The last nail is the clandestine operation. I had all I needed to put a stop to them. I didn't sneak in as Sophie Miller through a back door the next morning. I strolled across the main lobby of Horizon Tech. Unaware of the storm, staff nodded courteously as heels clicked on marble. I had been in the background for years at 38. However, I would enter the light today. The boardroom was prepared. The shareholders were called. Behind my chair, executives gathered in front of a huge screen. I waited patiently at the head with a heavy folder in front of me. The door opened, and Jim walked in with a cocky swagger. Like devoted dogs, his crew Ethan, Ryan, and Noah followed behind. They assumed this was standard procedure, another gathering to celebrate their brilliance. With the smile I had grown to despise, Jim took his place as vice president. Then he noticed me. His gaze wavered. Perplexity. A split in the mask. Ethan's eyebrows went up. Ryan moved. Noah grinned. I have no idea. Nobody said anything. They were still unable to comprehend why Jim's jobless wife was in charge. I let the stillness to linger, smothering, heavy. With a chilly voice that sliced through the room like glass, I said, "Sit down, Jim. This is something you and your friends will want to hear." His jaw clenched, but he obeyed, and his men did the same. Awkward scraping of chairs. I leaned forward and met his gaze. There was no sign of the shy Mia he had known. "I want to reintroduce myself before we start." A pause. Intentional. Allowing it to soak in. "I am Horizon Tech's founder and CEO, Mia Thompson." The air disappeared. Jim's expression was exhausted. Ethan's smile stopped. Ryan twitched his hands. Noah lost his hold on his phone. Panic followed by shock rippled. The screen came to life when I pressed a button. Their sins were exposed in a torrent of emails, texts, recordings, and transactions. "I've gathered evidence of your misconduct for 2 years," I said in a resolute tone. "Every word is a hammer. Every illicit transaction. You stole every dollar, each and every secret you gave to competitors." Images flickered. Jim's emails of kickback, Ethan's receipts for his yacht, Ryan's texts about bid rigging, the footage of Noah's harassment. Members of the shareholders gasped. "I have everything. Your falsehoods, your misuse of authority, even the manner in which you silenced everyone who attempted to speak." Jim's jaw dropped. There was no sound. He was drowning. "You believed that you could not be touched." I kept standing, and suddenly the room was filled with my presence. But only because I gave you the impression that I picked up the termination papers, signed them, and pushed them across the table, one for each of the crisp pages. With instant effect. "You have been let go from Horizon Tech." Jim's voice was crimson as he sprang up. "Aurora, this is not possible. I am the vice president. This is a site I constructed." I interrupted him. Final, sharp. "You didn't construct anything. I recruited you, and I started this business. I gave you access to my life. I'm kicking you out now." He stumbled back. Wild eyes, looking over at Ethan. Ryan, Noah as a fallback. They left him behind, shrinking heads down. The folder remained shut. I didn't have to crack it open. The screen was sufficiently expressive. I nodded to the doors and added, "Security is waiting." They opened with a creak. Figures in uniform intervening. Jim shuddered and looked at me as if I were a complete stranger. After years of making fun of me, he finally frightened me. I didn't recoil. "Jim, get out of here quietly before I make this worse." As their rule came to an end and mine began, the room held its breath. Security led Jim and his team out like shattered toys. As the boardroom doors closed behind them, I didn't see them go. I didn't have to. I could see the lobby via glass panels from the top stories. Workers huddled together, chatting and observing as the once powerful executives were led away. Jim's head drooped. Ryan and Noah were trailing like ghosts, and Ethan had lost his confidence. News quickly spread, Horizon Tech across a wildfire. Financial outlets exploded by midday, headlines calling for the VP and executives of Horizon Tech to be fired for corruption. Sting. Social media exploded, revealing tales of abuse and conceit that I had never even touched. They fell quickly, brutally, and rightfully. Jim's access to Horizon systems was terminated in a matter of hours. Employees who had formerly feared him packed his workplace into crates. The identical items that have been discarded curbside are in front of Ethan, Ryan, and Noah. The security badges were revoked. Competing companies phoned but chose not to employ. The odor of their shame was something no one desired. Word came back a week later. Jim had little left after his wife filed for divorce. The trophy girlfriend of Ethan ran away. Ryan put his house up for sale. Noah's attorney hurried to avoid legal action. One by one, their opulent lifestyles came undone like flimsy thread. Horizon Tech didn't make any mistakes. It flew. The purging served as a warning and a purification. By lunchtime, stock prices had slightly increased. Investors came in, bubbling with confidence in my unexpected leadership contracts that I had been holding back. Under Jim's rule, partners who had avoided us now begged to sign. After they departed, stockholders shook my hand, and the boardroom hush gave way to cheers. Grateful, yet stunned. The body recovered quickly after I removed the malignancy. After years of stress, several employees smiled in relief as they lingered in the hallways, their eyes wide. That evening, I stood in my office with the Chicago skyline glimmering outside the window, relieving the burden of 7 years. Jim had become nothing, a name removed from the history of Horizon. 2 footnotes in a warning story about his crew. I hadn't simply prevailed. What was mine again, with accuracy but not brutality. Untouchable since the meeting, the evidence folder remained on my desk. Later, I would forward it to the SEC. Let the law take care of them. Seeing their dominion burn to ash was sufficient for the time being, but mine grew more powerful. But this was not the end. It was only the start. They had poisoned the Horizon Tech. But I have to reconstruct it today. I had removed the decay, and I would plant something better tomorrow. Jim believed he had broken me, but all he had done was sharpen the blade I would use to slay him. There was no more fallout. I had the power to influence the future. Horizon Tech was left raw but alive as the fallout settled like dust after a storm. I didn't waste time lamenting Jim's departure or the failure of his crew. Work needed to be done. I called an all-company meeting the following day and stood in front of thousands of workers who had only ever known me as Jim's shadow on a stage in the atrium. I shed that skin when I was 38. With a steady voice that reverberated off glass walls, I introduced myself as Mia Thompson. We're starting over, founder and CEO, and nobody gets left behind. Applause followed ripples of murmurs, first tentative, then ferocious. They had been oppressed by Jim's rule. They were able to breathe now. Reconstruction got underway quickly. Every enabler was dismissed by me. Drones in the air that had disregarded harassment. Supervisors who had given Jim's ring a kiss. By midday, their workstations were empty, swapped out for talent I had harmed or scouted. I returned with souls. At the beginning, Kelsey Reed was a 34-year-old software developer. Jim was fired for not attending his drunken team building events. I gave her a call myself. "Are you sure you want me to return?" Over the line, she queried in a cautious tone. "I want more than simply your return. You should be in charge of our AI team," I suggested. A week later, she entered through the front doors. She walked without fear. Others came after them. Jim's forced out 20 previous employees. Click now to be purposefully reinstated. Under my leadership, the culture changed. I created new rules and destroyed the old ones. Openness guidelines and a means for anonymous reporting. Every boss should get ethics training. Backroom dealings are over. No more quiet. I started a mentorship program to match new recruits with veterans, particularly women in technology who had been neglected for too long. Meetings shifted. Just thoughts, no patronizing snickers. The voices rose without fear. I observed Kelsey's crew giggling over a prototype enthusiasm in their eyes as I walked by the break room one afternoon. Horizon Tech was no longer Jim's domain. I owned it. Not for destruction, but for creativity. The results were rapid. After 2 months, stock prices increased by 35%, and we signed 3 significant contracts, including one with a telecom company that had rejected us due to Jim's smell. Previously hesitant investors are now urging me to support me. I was dubbed the lady who revived Horizon in a Business Insider article. However, it wasn't the headlines and stats that had the biggest impact. It was the peaceful times, the hallways when tension was replaced by smiles, knowing that I had sown something genuine and cut the rot. Standing at my office window 6 months later, I could feel the expanse of Chicago under the night sky, calm. Below stories, horizon sparkled, pulsing with drive, a business that has been revitalized. We climbed, and Jim vanished. Word floated back. He was 42, currently working as a sales clerk at a suburban electronics store. He was fired with a 3-year ban from tech. Just a polyester vest and a barcode scanner, no suits or Rolex watches. During the divorce, his wife seized everything, abandoned him in a little apartment. According to friends, he had gone pallid, hollowed out, and had empty eyes. A man who had lost everything. Ethan, Ryan. Noah did not fare much better. Put on a blacklist, broke their names. The industry is poisonous. They were specters. Irrelevant. Horizon prospered without them, but I didn't keep tabs on them. Not necessary. The spark had been revenge. The flames was no longer brighter though, driven by fairness, by the business I had taken back. I occasionally glanced back at the folks I had hauled from my workplace. Jim's initial grin upon meeting me. I took his barbs at those dinners. I broke him in the boardroom. It seemed far away. I had outgrown the narrative. I had been under his shadow for too long, allowing him to believe that I was his. However, it is no longer the case. The past had been sealed off. The future was far off. It was demonstrated by Horizon's expansion. We exceeded every objective in collaboration with Kelsey's AI team, a European software company. As the mentorship program expanded, it helped young women rise from obscurity to positions of authority. Once more, I stood in a boardroom to design new markets and new goals rather than to cleanse. Workers conversed in the corridors, fearless, alive. Then something clicked. Tearing down is not true retaliation. It's getting worse. One transformed Horizon into a representation of justice rather than Jim's avarice, inventiveness. Those who refused to be quiet. I rested against my window 6 months after the fall. Constantly below Horizon's revenues, the city's pulse reached a record high. The true victory, however, went deeper. The break rooms laughing. The aura of trust. Jim believed he would define me. However, he had simply made me more angular. I didn't have to see him fall apart to be aware that I had won. Every time I walked down these hallways, I sensed it. Every contract was signed. I changed all the lives. This was my legacy, my kingdom. And it was only the start. Here's the lesson then. Power belongs to people who earn it with honesty and determination, not to those who manipulate others. A bank account does not equate to success. It's the good you create, the mark you leave. For a time, Jim flourished. The truth, however, always comes through. I stepped in with power, not resentment. What are your thoughts? Was I correct? Raising something better by stripping them naked? Or was there another way? I have told my story. You judge it. You